OPEC in serious trouble. Elon Musk and Sam Altman go to court, and Russia preparing for real life Star Wars. Your friends back from Arcanum Ventures with another weekly recap. Sasha and Carmelo from Arcanum Ventures here to deliver you the biggest headlines around the worlds of finance, technology, hardware, AI, blockchain, and more over the past 7 days. Mello, how you doing, brother?
Doing all right. Thanks for asking. And yeah, another crazy week. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And how you doing, man?
Yeah, not bad. It has been, it's felt like a roller coaster, obviously, through 2026. But I think things have ramped up considerably in the past week. We're seeing, I don't know, maybe the falling apart of society as we know it. But hopefully, there's going to be some greener pastures to come. A lot happening specifically around like the Iran conflict in the Middle East, and most notably around AI. Like there's so much AI news going on.
Yeah, I think you and I, and maybe everybody that watches this, is becoming a little bit more zen in the face of these stories. Like there's so much going on, and you can't just panic every time you see a new headline, which is what a lot of people do. But yeah. Anyways, I guess we'll dive in. And unsurprisingly, the first story we're going to cover today is the continuing negotiations or fighting in Iran in the Middle East. And yeah, the big update this week is that Iran offered a deal to the US, and the US said no, essentially. Iran offered to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which is critical. We've been talking about this for months now. It's critical for global trade. I think 20% of the trade in the entire world goes through that strait. And, they offered to lift it, but there was one catch, that all nuclear negotiations had to get pushed to a later stage, basically after the war is concluded or after a permanent ceasefire has been found. And the U.S. obviously didn't want to take that deal. So Trump warned the U.S. will shoot and kill any boats, any Iranian mine boats. Oil is back above $105 a barrel, and the war stays stuck for now. And on top of that, Iran, I believe they sent people to Islamabad for more negotiations, and then they sent them to Amman and Moscow. They're meeting with the Russian President Putin, who has been expressing support for Iran and giving them help behind the scenes. So, yeah, a little bit more of the same. I don't think right now, I think everything's priced in. So none of these things really hurt or help the markets much, because we're just sort of expecting this prolonged conflict to go on.
Yeah, very, very strange indeed. I think, the world, it feels like things have calmed down a little bit. Maybe there's not as much news around bombs being dropped in different areas. I know Israel is continuing their push into Lebanon, but maybe things have calmed down because maybe both the U.S. and Iran are looking for some sort of concession. I know in the past, was it week or two ago, where they were trying to push some negotiations through. Iran apparently immediately refused to negotiate with U.S. representatives, citing, I believe I read an article saying they didn't want to negotiate with Jared Kushner, who is considered a civilian and cannot guarantee any terms from the Trump admin. So that was interesting, and potentially maybe highlighted a move for the U.S. to send individuals to that negotiation table as just a kind of like dog and pony show. I am watching this quite closely, waiting to see what is going to happen. I think the public discussion, at least the forefront, is more so centered around the economic impact globally, and people are feeling this everywhere outside of just gasoline. So that's going to continue to be the focus. I know there were some hearings in the U.S., particularly with Pete Hegseth, with senators and representatives asking him, where is the end in sight? I think a lot of the pushback he was giving was, we don't want a nuclear armed Iran. But funny enough, that story hasn't been consistent over the past several months since this conflict started. So, yeah, strange times indeed.
Yeah, it's more of a saving face thing. Like, you can't come away from this pointless excursion without any perceived benefit or gain from it. And so far, just reopening the strait, which was open before, that's not going to do a whole lot to appease the general public, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. In related news, this is an absolute bombshell. The UAE, United Arab Emirates, is leaving OPEC. So the UAE will exit OPEC effective May 1st. And the UAE, for those of you that don't know, produces about 3.3 million barrels of oil per day. It's one of the highest capacity members of OPEC and has been pushing for higher production quotas for years. So it's, let's say, a juggernaut of the organization. And obviously, the departure follows years of tension between Abu Dhabi and Riyadh over production limits, among some other things. And the Iran war really did change this calculation entirely. The UAE they claim they cannot publicly align itself with a cartel that includes Iran's allies and interests, while U.S. warships are operating in the Persian Gulf on behalf of Western energy security. And we do know that we've said this in the past story. This conflict has harmed many countries' economies across the globe, particularly for OPEC-focused countries, because the majority of their economy focuses on oil exports. Unfortunately, this is going to pose a big threat to the petrodollar and, as a result, the U.S. dollar globally across the financial stage. So very, very scary news for Americans, very scary news for the global economy. And it does kind of set up the signal of what is going to happen next, because UAE is a massive player when it comes not only to oil, but the economy globally.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like, this is a fracturing of like pan-Arabian geopolitical power. Like the map is being redrawn based off of this war that's happening in Iran and the Middle East. Like, you're seeing some unlikely bedfellows in countries aligning with other countries that they used to hate, and vice versa. So that's a little bit strange. And also, this is a validation for like the energy security thesis. Like you need to be able to control your own energy. You cannot be dependent on the Strait of Hormuz. You cannot be dependent on OPEC anymore. So this is, like, ironically, it's good for North American oil and nuclear energy and LNG. Like, it's better, but it is, I believe, bad for the petrodollar. Like Russia, Iran, some of these countries and BRICS, they've been trying to move the world away from the US dollar standard, and the petrodollar basically trying to do a value exchange in other currencies outside of the US dollar. So maybe we're moving more to that. The US dollar is not doing well right now. I can say firsthand, because I'm living in Europe, and the dollar is diminishing more and more day after day. And I do not believe that after May 1st, this will bode well for the dollar. So I'm expecting to see the dollar go down even further in comparison to the franc, the euro, to the Japanese yen, and other currencies.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Scary times.
Yep. All right. Well, moving on from that fun stuff, we're going to move into the deep tech category of this presentation, and we're going to have a lot of information about OpenAI today. But perhaps one of the most interesting ones is OpenAI. Some plans leaked this week. I don't know if you heard about it, but OpenAI could be making a phone right now as we speak, getting into hardware with AI agents as well. Not a surprise there, but I believe the thesis is they want to get rid of the app store. They want to get rid of operating systems and just make it completely agent native. So you talk to your phone, you have different agents doing different things, and that's going to be the new phone experience. And it might sound crazy now, but there was a time when mobile phones, like basically computers in the palm of your hand, sounded crazy to most people, and now it's the global norm. But supply chain analyst Ming-Chi Kuo reported this week that OpenAI is basically building its own smartphone, no app grid, no home screen, just an AI agent that handles every task for you. Luxshare, the company that assembles iPhones, is said to be manufacturing it in mass production with 300 to 400 million units ordered by 2028. So this person has an accurate record on Apple supply chain predictions, so heavily plugged in with the supply chain, especially in Asia. So he says OpenAI is co-developing a custom smartphone with Qualcomm and MediaTek. Luxshare is the exclusive manufacturing partner. So interesting to get this information, not from OpenAI itself, but some experts in the supply chain. Pretty interesting. A weird pivot for OpenAI, but who knows? All these tech companies and AI companies are trying to do everything at once.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. I think this came off the news that OpenAI had missed some revenue targets over the past quarter. So I'm not sure like how serious this is, but it must be pretty serious, because Qualcomm's stock I believe, surged more than 10% on the report. I mean, claiming that they're going to ship 300 to 400 million devices a year. For comparison, Apple is shipping 200 to 300 million iPhones a year. So I don't know if OpenAI is suddenly going to overtake the iPhone as, phone of the
Probably not.
century, but yeah, probably not. It's very interesting though, because this is very, very kind of like hype and exciting when you think about, we've been drawing analogies from current state of AI to like sci-fi movies and books over the past 100 years, and it's something that many people have been kind of like thinking of in the back of their minds, especially with the movie Her that came out. This is essentially a device that is, you know, it's going to serve as like your sidekick. If it's just a device with an agent on it, you're going to be speaking to it and asking it to do things from a user interface and user experience perspective. It's something I would never do. That seems too burdensome. I wouldn't want to just like talk to a piece of metal all day to get things done. I kind of like using my thumbs. At the same time, it does pose some risk because I don't think ChatGPT and OpenAI have worked out all the kinks on all their models. So it's like having a sidekick that's constantly, reassuring you that you're pretty and that you're handsome and that you're doing all the good things and hallucinating for you. Like, it doesn't sound like a very good friend to have in your corner at all times of the day. But again, I think they had to pivot and do something. It's going to be interesting to see how this rollout goes, and maybe it's going to shift the smartphone landscape for the future to come. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think like what was it last week? We were talking about the exact opposite. Apple just Tim Cook stepped down, retired, and they brought in a new guy to lead Apple into the AI future. And Apple is notoriously bad with AI so far. They're way behind the other Mag 7 companies in the AI race. So they're moving into improving the AI on their devices, whereas OpenAI is like, we have good AI already. Let's build devices. Let's get competitive in these other areas. So it looks like all these companies are becoming the same company, just competitors.
Absolutely. Oh, man. All right, up next, we've got some crazy news coming out of Meta. Again, we've been quite critical of Mark Zuckerberg and Meta and the random pivots they go into. Now they're getting into energy, apparently. So Meta plans on beaming solar power from space for its data centers. It's amazing how the data center game is still on the forefront of every foundational model developer and Mag 7 company's mind. They inked a deal with Overview Energy this past week to provide up to 1 gigawatt of power from space-based solar satellites. The satellites will collect sunlight in orbit and beam that sunlight to solar farms on the ground, which solves a problem of, essentially being able to collect energy at night. This is not something new. In fact, there have been a number of different space tech companies that have done similar things, but I don't think they've done it to a scale of collecting 1 gigawatt of power from the sun at night. So maybe it does set an interesting precedent. But apparently, Meta says they need this because their data centers consume over 18,000 gigawatt hours of electricity in 2024. And that's enough to power 1.7 million American homes. And with
Wow.
What they're planning on doing and building out more AI infrastructure and also potentially providing compute and other services to other competitor AI companies, it's clear that energy is still a huge problem when it comes to the AI industry. So they're now getting into the energy game, and they're taking the Death Star route to do it. This is wild. There's so much Star Wars news lately.
Yeah, and this has like been theorized since like the 1970s, but yeah, it's crazy that it's actually being put into practice now. Like we're able to actually do this. It is pretty encouraging. Like we were just talking about energy dependency and moving away from fossil fuels and this OPEC cartel, and now finding new interesting ways to do this, and beaming solar power from outer space. I am not a fan of all the data centers that are being built right now. I think we should scale back or impose a moratorium like Maine did. But if we're gonna struggle to power these things, at least look for alternatives like nuclear. I think we covered like mini nuclear reactors. That's a little bit scary, but I can live with solar power being beamed from space satellites. At least that seems a little bit like the onus is on outer space and not so much on our planet. But I guess we're going to start seeing more of this. We're going to start. I'm seeing funds being spun up, just only investing in companies for energy infra because they're realizing this is going to be a major choke point for the growth of AI in the next several years. So energy is like sort of determinant factor. And I believe there was another some executive at NVIDIA said that you're actually better off paying people now than you are buying and replacing them with AI tools because it's just not scalable. The economics are not there yet. It's more expensive to use these tools, coding tools and everything than it is to just pay people, at least for now. That might not be the case in the future, but the whole thesis here is reduce the cost of energy, build more data centers, build more chips, and that price goes down. And then everybody can use these tools freely.
Troubling news for Oracle, who laid off 30,000 employees last month. This doesn't seem very safe. I just want to make one more point. Like, I hope that they're taking the proper precautions because it feels like beaming 1 gigawatt of worth of sunlight from space. Like, I mean, yeah, they could miss and roast some guy on the ground. Like, that's a very dangerous thing. So I hope that they get this right.
Be such a wild news story that we're probably going to see soon. But
oh my god!
Speaking of orbital death beams, Russia is apparently online and operational with their own orbital weapons. For those that don't know, orbital means like satellite space weapons, basically. So the U.S. Space Command confirmed on April 25th that Russia has fully operationalized co-orbital anti-satellite weapons, bringing the fight to space. These are satellites in orbit that can physically approach and destroy other satellites. So it's physical. It's not laser, unfortunately, yet. But space is now an active weapons theater, and this is no longer theoretical. So the Space Force started a few years ago in the U.S. actually starts to make a little bit more sense now that we're going to have to be fighting this battle on the different battle theater. But these co-orbital anti-satellite weapons, or ASAT weapons, are satellites that maneuver in orbit to approach and physically destroy other satellites. And Russia has had them in development for more or less a few years. And the U.S. Space Command confirmed this week they are now operational, meaning Russia has the capability deployed and ready to use. And I don't think we've ever seen anything like this yet, at least on mass scale. We're going to start seeing more defense tech deployments here for funding for protection for defense against these things, new kinds of weapons to take out other enemy satellites from foreign countries. I think this is a little bit worrying too, because we're going to start seeing more shrapnel in outer space, and we're going to have, I forgot the word for it, but essentially all these pieces floating around the Earth in low orbit that it's going to be impossible to launch any payloads into space anymore. I think I'm kind of worried about turning our orbit into another battleground, but it looks like that's the future we're looking at right now, because satellites are giving us capabilities for energy, as we've just seen with Meta, and it's giving us capabilities for intelligence, for spying, for any kind of sharing of information. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to have these weapons online. It's just another threat to have in your arsenal if you're fighting wars against other countries in 2026.
Yeah. I mean, very, very strange times, like we said, throughout this episode already. I think the war in Ukraine and the war in Iran have been a testament to the fact that there are these governments that are and also these defense tech providers that are spending millions and billions of dollars in hardware that are being used for defense purposes, let's say offensive purposes, but this infrastructure is quite delicate, and we're talking about like space defense. That sounds great, but a lot of this stuff can be attacked and cost Russia or the U.S. or China, another several $billion. I feel like this is maybe a story that shows that we should try and get along more and focus on less conflict. The good thing about space tech and defense tech like this is that it does force innovation, and there's probably a lot of lessons learned that are going to be uncovered as a result of this campaign to launch anti-satellite defense tech into space by Russia, and maybe that'll trickle its way down to civilian tech or other applications. So that's cool, but I don't like the fact that we're taking war to like many different types of landscapes and airscapes and spacescapes, I suppose.
And seascapes too. I think there was another story we didn't include, but I think there's just been a mandate put out by the U.S. government looking to aggressively fund deep sea drones, like submarine drones, basically. So
great.
Another battlefield that we can look forward to, I guess.
We're giving Skynet everything it needs. Wild.
Yep.
All right, more hardware news. We've got some crazy news out of China. Well, not so crazy. I don't think anyone is surprised by this, but apparently a Chinese robot just beat the half marathon world record in Beijing. Of course, it happened in China. China has been the relentless leader in humanoid robot technology, and they've been using robots for all sorts of crazy things. And of course, they threw a robot into a half marathon race. So the robot last week, called Lightning, ran the Beijing E-Town half marathon in 50 minutes and 26 seconds, beating the previous human world record, which is 57 minutes and 20 seconds. And so it beat the world record by a human by 7 minutes. The robot was developed by Chinese smartphone maker Honor, which is very interesting. These Chinese hardware manufacturer companies are pivoting into many, many different things. And Lightning was running autonomously, no remote control. It used a pre-mapped course, which MIT robotics professor Rodney Brooks noted in Scientific American, meaning the robot never had to adapt to an unknown environment and knew exactly where it was running. And I assume that it was using a lot of different sensors to make sure that it wasn't trucking over people in the process of winning this race. But this is very exciting news, considering that it shows that there are more and more applications that these humanoid robots can do, and they did just prove it's better than humans at doing something. Coincidentally, a human named Sebastian Sawe, I believe, just beat the full marathon record, finally cracking a 2-hour marathon, or I'm sorry,
Wow.
sub 2-hour marathon. So congratulations to him. And I think there was another person that came in second place that beat the 2-hour mark as well, but unfortunately he got beat by this guy. So tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, it reminds me of like John Henry, this old American folktale where he's competing against this stake driver for building the railroads, and his heart gave out, but he took the machine to the final round, basically. But yeah, like, I don't know, you're right. Like, it's not a surprise. These robots are designed to be better than us in very specific applications, I might add. So I think it's worth noting that this robot crashed into a barrier right before the end of the race and had to be helped up. So if left to its own devices, maybe it wouldn't have come in first or beat the record. But it's a perfect, I guess, example of where robots are right now, robotics in general. It's almost there. It's very good for hyper specific scaled applications, but it's not going to replace us anytime soon. But yeah,
Nope.
China is definitely looking to pivot and make more of these humanoid robots. So yeah, it's exciting to see what's coming out of China. This is a little bit more friendly, more of a publicity stunt. But yeah, it's better than seeing like robots are used to fight more wars in the Middle East or in Ukraine.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, and now on to AI, which is kind of misleading because everything we talk about has some element of AI in it. But this is probably the biggest story of the week, not just for AI, but in general. Like, everybody's talking about it. But the trial began this week on April 28th. Musk versus Altman, the trial of the century, the case that could tear OpenAI apart. The Elon Musk versus Sam Altman trial opened, and apparently Musk is accusing Altman of stealing a charity that he helped start back in 2018. So he is seeking $130 billion in damages, the removal of Altman and Brockman from OpenAI, and a forced return to nonprofit structure. Altman was in the courtroom, so they're both there in person, as was Microsoft's CEO. And Musk co-founded OpenAI, sorry, not back in 2018, but 2015 as a nonprofit. A lot of people are surprised to hear that still. I didn't know it until after OpenAI launched, but he gave at least $38 million in early funding and recruited the founding team. He then left in 2018 after a power struggle over who would run the company, and OpenAI created a for-profit subsidiary in 2019 after he left. And Musk's claim is that Altman, Brockman, and Microsoft unjustly enriched themselves by converting a charity into a into a for-profit seeking enterprise worth $850 billion. So his lawyers said that they stole a charity. This other unit that they spun off became the dominant part of the organization, kind of eclipsing this nonprofit fund structure that they originally intended to use. And Musk's lawsuit apparently is motivated by jealousy and competitive interest. He is now launching a competitor with XAI and SpaceX, this Goliath that he created. So it is a competitor, but he wants to see Sam Altman put out of business. He wants to see OpenAI return to its humble roots as a nonprofit. So yeah, it's a massive. It's only day 3, but so far we've seen Musk joking around on stand, refusing to answer questions. Altman has not gone up to talk yet, but I don't know how long this trial is going to go for. I don't know how realistic it is that OpenAI will just get dissected and replaced. I think there's too much money on the line. There's trillions of dollars at play here, so I don't think they're going to just remove Altman and dissect this company. But who knows? Stranger things have happened. I think this is probably the story of the year if we're being honest about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is definitely the story of the year. We're talking about OpenAI, which is maybe one of 2 private companies that may IPO above $1 trillion. And it's no lie that, Elon Musk did come up with the idea. He came up with a name, he recruited the people, and he provided the initial funding. This was all him in the beginning. And that's well documented. And so he does have a very strong claim to some ownership of OpenAI. My guess is that, he's aiming for the removal of Altman and Brockman and the reversion of OpenAI back to a nonprofit structure. But he's aiming high because he's probably going to be getting something a little bit lower. And what I would anticipate is that he's going to be getting a large chunk of ownership of OpenAI, which is a great hedge for him in this AI race that we're seeing right now, especially with his company XAI, etc. He is gunning for, I believe it said $130 billion potential ownership of the company. I'm not sure how accurate that is. I might have misread that, but that would take his own personal net worth from like $850 billion to potentially past $1 trillion. And so that might be the more realistic outcome of this. Obviously, it's going to completely restructure OpenAI's cap table. I know they've been constantly raising funding over the past several years, and they just announced another funding round past $850 billion, I think a couple of weeks ago. So it is going to shake the foundations of OpenAI, but I don't think it'll tear the company apart. I think that's good for headlines. We will see some changes internally. I don't think Sam Altman's going away anytime soon, but yeah, I mean, it's about time we got here because, Musk did put the majority of the funding into OpenAI in the beginning stages. So he has a very strong claim.
Yeah, I mean, we saw like Sam Altman did get replaced before and then they brought him back. So he has become a lightning rod. So at some point they might replace him if it means, justifying that multi-trillion dollar IPO that they're going for. But I think Musk is not going to win like part of the company. He's going to get $130 billion in restitution or damages, and then hopefully revert the company back to a nonprofit where there will be none of this will be relevant. There'll be no ownership. It'll just be a nonprofit again. But yeah, that'll get messy. There's been a lot of billions and hundreds of billions of dollars poured in by Microsoft and Amazon and Nvidia. So like we've been talking about this incest puddle for a long time and how all these companies are investing in each other. You can't separate quite easily after this happens. So I think they're going to take that into consideration when they weigh this in court. But who knows? I'm going to be excited to see what happens. I'm not rooting for any side in particular here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all the arguments are flawed on all the ends. It was impossible to keep OpenAI a nonprofit at that stage and grow the company and continue to do the research. They needed money and they needed to bring in money through investors. So a lot of this is going to come to light. And I think, we're going to see some crazy headlines coming. But funny enough, and this is potentially the headline of our new article. The trial against Elon Musk wasn't the worst thing that happened to Sam Altman last week, apparently. We're talking about OpenAI missing its revenue targets. I mentioned that before. Wall Street Journal reported on Monday that they missed their internal goal of 1 billion weekly active users and its own revenue targets. 1 billion active users is wild, by the way. We're talking about like Facebook's social media status. The CFO, Sarah Fryer, warned colleagues the company may not be able to pay its computing contracts if revenue growth does not accelerate. As a result, Oracle stock price fell 5%, CoreWeave fell 7%, SoftBank fell 10% overnight. And the Wall Street Journal is reporting that people familiar with the matter are stating ChatGPT growth slowed at the end of last year, and that is the result of what we're seeing right now. So the company's $100 billion deal with NVIDIA fell apart separately. There's a lot of strife on the plate for OpenAI, and especially with this lawsuit with Elon Musk pending. It seems like the company can be in some very, very dire financial status right now. So OpenAI did push back publicly, saying that it has steady momentum across enterprise and consumer products. They highlighted the breakout growth of Codex, and we do know that they did announce the launch, or at least the intention of launching a hardware device that some reporters are claiming is going to be an agent-based smartphone. So, a lot happening here, but not good for the people that have been, kind of just riding through this AI bubble. This is the first big crack in what we've seen so far when it comes to the AI landscape.
Yeah, and like literally last week we talked about the solo paradox, where thousands of CEOs are saying AI has not had that productivity bump or impact that they've been hoping for. And now the company that is supposed to be delivering that productivity is missing its own user revenue targets, which is a little bit worrying. And I think this also kind of harkens back to this whole mess with the Anthropic White House DOD contract, where everybody was flaming them for working so closely with the U.S. government. Everybody was switching over to Anthropic and Claude because they had a moral backbone and they stood up to the government, which ironically they've quietly come back to and taken a seat at the table again, and they're working with the U.S. Government and they're collaborating once again. But anyways, I saw this huge migration of users from ChatGPT to Claude. I think we reported it several times on this show, and I think this is just that coming to fruition. So also on top of that, they had $600 billion in spending commitments and another $200 billion in expected losses before profitability. So that's like a massive structural problem. And ironically, we're just talking about it. This was a nonprofit before. Now it's a for-profit company that's just hemorrhaging money. I don't know how long they can afford to do that while they let others catch up. China, other companies like Anthropic, Google is getting more and more impressive day after day. So it's not looking great for them right now. I don't know how they come out of this alive.
I'm not sure either, man. It's a rough time. And even more rough news, huh?
Yeah. Well, not so rough. This is more OpenAI news. We told you we had a lot of OpenAI news today, but this one's not as bad. But OpenAI is breaking up with Microsoft, and they have gone with Amazon as their new cloud partner, which is pretty big because Microsoft was backing them completely. I think this was also part of why Elon has such a big problem with Sam Altman and OpenAI, is because he despises Microsoft and Bill Gates. So OpenAI just ended its exclusivity agreement with Microsoft this week and brought its models to Amazon Cloud, working with Jeff Bezos' Amazon. Microsoft has been OpenAI's exclusive partner for cloud partner since 2019, I believe. And that relationship essentially just ended, and Microsoft even invested over $13 billion in this. So like we said, messy divorces all around, a lot of funding from this incestuous circle of tech companies and AI companies. When you break things up, it's way messier than any average divorce can be. So OpenAI and Microsoft have been exclusive, and all OpenAI models have been run through Microsoft's Azure, and that exclusivity is now gone. I don't know what this means for them, to be honest. Like, I don't know if that means they can go with anybody or have multiple partners, polyamorous, if you will. But the strategic logic for OpenAI is like reducing dependency on a single cloud provider, lowers cost, and increases negotiating leverage. So when your CFO is worried about paying compute contracts, having two cloud giants competing for your business certainly helps. That much is clear. So the timing is notable. Microsoft is simultaneously a defendant in that Musk trial that we just mentioned and accused of aiding OpenAI's alleged breach of charitable trust. So this is Game of Thrones type drama in the tech world in Silicon Valley. Like it's exciting, and I would rather them kind of infight and distract each other so they don't take over the world as quickly as they are right now.
I mean, like it feels like backstabbing. It might not be backstabbing. This might have been a smart move coming out of OpenAI, especially in light of missing their internal revenue targets. I know that there's a lot of speculation behind this. As a result of this news, Microsoft's stock dropped like dramatically. I don't know how much, but then it seems to have bounced back. Maybe that was just the market overreacting. But the signal that it is telling potential investors, especially when OpenAI plans on IPOing, is that they want to be a little bit more competitive about these contracts. That exclusivity or they were granting to Microsoft, maybe that came with the investment that they had put into the company. But now they need to think a little bit more about reducing their operational expenses. And to do that, they need to look for more competitive solutions for cloud hosting. And whether that's AWS, Microsoft, or whoever, they're going to make the best financial decision for their company, which is what people want to see when a company misses those financial targets. Now, it doesn't take away from Microsoft's ownership of the company. Of course, you mentioned that they are supporting them in the lawsuit. They are actually being accused of helping facilitate that stealing of a charity. But yeah, Microsoft's original, was it $13 billion they invested? That they've seen incredible appreciation and value over the past year or two from that original investment. So they shouldn't be too unhappy. But again, I think you mentioned, and the news did state that like half of their cloud service revenue was anticipated to come from OpenAI. So that's a massive hit on that business.
Oof. Yeah, it must be awkward in court right now. You're fighting Elon Musk, and you're also like looking over each other like, I hate you, man. You're killing me right now.
Wild. Killing me indeed. All right, up next in the world of AI, we've got some crazy news coming. China is blocking a $2 billion deal that Meta had pushed through with Manus AI. So Manus AI is an AI agent company. They build general purpose AI agents that can execute complex tasks autonomously, much like what we've seen with OpenClaw and Claude Code, etc. China's National Development and Reform Commission ordered Meta unwind their $2 billion acquisition of the company on Monday. The deal was announced back in December. Meta's employees had already joined Meta's team, but the two Chinese co-founders had been banned from leaving China. And the message that Beijing had been giving is Chinese AI talent and technology will stay in China, putting a hard foot down. The company was founded in Beijing and then relocated to Singapore. Afterwards, Meta had announced that acquisition. China launched a probe in January, understanding what was happening here. And as a result, they barred the two co-founders from leaving the country while the investigation had drawn out. So this is a massive hit to Meta. A lot of bad news for Meta in the last year, I'd say alone. But really, really strange precedent coming out of China. We haven't seen anything like this coming out of other countries, more notably the US, because there are so many foundational AI companies and Mag 7 companies that started in the US, and some of those have moved outside of the country. We haven't seen that kind of government intervention yet from the US, but China seems to be making that precedent. And, they might be setting the future tone of what happens with these large companies as they continue to grow.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're not so concerned. I mean, they're concerned overall that you don't want your talent leaving. You don't want companies leaving that are promising. But if they go to another friendly country, it's one thing. But if they go to your arch nemesis, US and China notoriously hate each other. So, this might set a new precedent for the US to do the same if engineers and talent wants to go the other way. But this is the most significant move China has made in the AI talent war, and it sends a clear message to every Chinese AI founder that if you build it in China, China owns you. They own everything you're doing. This relocation to Singapore doesn't matter. There's this weird thing called Singapore washing. It's like this phenomenon where Chinese talent or companies move to Singapore sort of to be Chinese friendly, but also kind of be autonomous and independent. But that's over. That's not going to fly anymore. Apparently, China just put its foot down. So that strategy is gone and dead and buried. But the technology, talent, data originated in China and Beijing, and they're all considered like strategic national assets, basically. And we've been talking about this too with chips, companies, talent. China is aggressively protecting its best interests. They don't want to depend on NVIDIA cards. They don't want to depend on foreign chips. They don't want to depend on anything outside of China. And they want to keep everything in-house because they do have some great engineering and some great talent and companies coming out of China. So they want to keep it there.
Yeah, absolutely. Crazy news, man.
Yep, we'll see more of that. And finally, last AI promise. This is the last AI story of the week, but Google is expanding their Pentagon access to AI, basically. So, all of the the stuff, all of the trouble that OpenAI got and Anthropic and all this drama, Google silently started working more and more with the Pentagon. But Google signed this deal with the Pentagon on Monday, allowing AI to be used for any lawful government purpose, quote unquote lawful. I don't know what that means or who's defending that term or who's the watchdog here. But anyways, lawful government purpose, including classified military networks. Around 600 Google employees signed an open letter to CEO Sundar Pichai, urging him not to do it. So 600, that's like quite the internal coup. The deal was signed at 4 p.m. the same day. The same pattern that ended Project Maven in 2018 is playing out a little bit differently in 2026. And the deal essentially gives the U.S. DoD access to Google's Gemini AI models on classified network for any lawful government purpose. This language mirrors contracts the Pentagon already has with OpenAI and XAI, and now all three now have the same framework in place. I'm not sure about Claude and Anthropic. They might have their own separate contract. But yeah, this is, I don't know. I wonder if they get as much trouble as these other companies have for working with the DoD right now. Nobody wants to see these AI tools going to autonomous weapon systems in the Middle East, but that's apparently what they're being used for. Whether they call them lawful or unlawful or not is remains to be seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Anthropic is excluded from the DoD contracts. That was the big drama from, I think, end of last year, early this year. And so now it seems like Anthropic is the only large foundational developer that is not involved with the Department of Defense or potentially even providing those services to any government office. I assume they might, but I'm not 100% sure. Funny enough, like I would suspect that this is exactly what has been happening in China. We talk about the U.S. versus China when it comes to AI might, and I would assume that the Chinese government has full access to the use of any foundational models any of the developers or tech conglomerates over there have created for any sort of uses, including military applications. And so, maybe the U.S. is just kind of following suit. Maybe that's with some political pressure. Maybe that's just with some financial incentive, considering that the U.S. and the government and the different departments within it are probably going to consume a lot of compute for many different types of applications. So it does look like a good potential consumer. But yeah, funny enough, the direct comparison to Anthropic is very important. Now they are the only foundational model that has publicly stated we are not going to be used for military applications. I wonder how long that's going to last, honestly.
Yeah, I'm hearing mixed things. Like, I think they are still being used for military applications. Maybe they don't have this contract that the others have, but I think they've just been a little bit quieter and sneakier about it. They're like, okay, well, we're at the table again. Maybe they fought hard for a few terms to be excluded or something, but I know for sure that they're using them right now as we speak.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And now moving into blockchain and cryptocurrency news, what is happening with Bitcoin? Apparently at Bitcoin 2026 in Las Vegas, which has historically been an event for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency evangelists that have been focused on more, financial sovereignty away from government regulation and institutional financial involvement. At this event, SEC Chair Paul Atkins gave his first major public speech on digital assets. He declared an end to regulation through enforcement, which was the approach of the previous SEC chair, Gary Gensler, as many people know that have been involved in the cryptocurrency landscape over the past 5 to 10 years. Atkins announced plans for joint SEC and CFTC guidance on crypto market structure, and he also teased an innovation exemption for companies building on-chain tokenized securities, which is huge because this is going to affect a lot of companies that have launched utility tokens that maybe lacked a lot of utility. At the same time, Bitcoin hit $79.5 thousand last week, but has twice fell past the 80 after bouncing off the $80,000 psychological barrier. Derivatives open interest fell 9% as well, and funding rates suggest that the markets are positioning themselves cautiously. At the same time, Michael Saylor's strategy bought more than 3,000 Bitcoin for over $250 million this past week. And now their total holdings are over 818,000 Bitcoin, which is close to 3.8% of all circulating supply. So massive movements in the market when it comes to Bitcoin, massive news as well. This might be a lot of shop talk. We don't know what clarity is actually being provided from the SEC chair. But again, like you don't go to Bitcoin 2026 and just drop a lot of news and then nothing ever happens. Wait, that's actually happened many times in the past, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I saw some of I don't know if you saw them, but some of the videos from the event, you had like completely empty rooms for some of these guys like Cash Patel and Todd Blanche, like high up in the government, like the USAG and everything, and head of the FBI. And then you had a full room, full house for Michael Saylor talking about, like, how many times can you go see Michael Saylor talk? Like, the guy is, to his credit, he was right about a lot of this. Like, he had the strategy first, pun intended, before anybody else, but he just says the same thing all the time: keep buying more Bitcoin. And this week he did buy a lot more Bitcoin, I think $250 million worth, like you said. But yeah, the funniest thing is he was starting to get some hate because he was talking about other cryptocurrencies and altcoins, and I was seeing people saying, is Michael Saylor an altcoiner now? Like, he's moving away from maximalism. But I don't think that's the case. But this conference has become less for maxis. I think you had to be a Bitcoin maxi before, and only you had to swear off all other currencies, tokenization, stable coins, everything. And now it's very much a very centralized TradFi bro conference in the desert. So kind of a strange conference.
Yeah.
And next up, speaking of stable coins, we have a 175-year-old money transfer giant, Western Union, is going on chain officially. And I think we mentioned this briefly before, but it was just a rumor. But now it's been confirmed that Western Union is announcing its own launch of a Solana-powered stablecoin called USDPT, weird name, in partnership with Anchorage Digital Bank. And the company has 550,000 agent locations in 200 countries around the world. I didn't even know there was that many countries, to be honest with you. But yeah, Western Union is doing big business everywhere. Probably the biggest name in remittance in the world that isn't Tron or crypto, but they want to get in on that on-chain business. So it's building its own digital asset network to connect consumer crypto wallets with physical retail locations. A stable card for spending in dozens of markets is coming later this year. So you can actually get your own Western Union stable coin card. And Western Union was founded in 1851. So it's the largest global money transfer network in the world. It's older than the telephone. And USDPT stablecoin is designed primarily to modernize institutional cross-border settlement across its agent network, replacing legacy payment rails with on-chain settlement. So this is massive news for Solana. This is massive news for crypto. This is massive news for Western Union and anybody that's ever sent money across international borders. So this is kind of the original goal of crypto, is to make settlement and remittance a little bit easier. And if Western Union's getting in on it, then this is no small story.
Yeah, I mean, huge news for I was going to say lasagna, Solana. I mean, huge news for crypto in general. I think this is, not really surprising though. We've been expecting this news for a long time. All these legacy financial institutions pivoting to on-chain settlement and remittance, and this is something that is just better than what exists right now. For anyone that's sent a Western Union wire transfer, they know that, a 175-year-old money transfer giant still sucks. Like it's awful to send a wire transfer. It's extremely expensive. It takes a lot of time, and it's all just like, paper ledger technology. It was inevitable that they were going to eventually retrofit their entire infrastructure to be on chain, to be more efficient, and save the company a lot of money. Does that mean they're going to cut their costs? No, they're probably going to be taking somewhere in the middle, but their margins are going to be going through the roof. So good for them. And again, it's not a big surprise. We've seen a lot of stablecoin news coming out from other players. PayPal USD launched a year or two ago. Stripe has been moving more into blockchain infrastructure. Even DoorDash is testing their own stablecoin payment system. So very exciting nonetheless. We'll see how that fares for Solana Maxi and Solana bag holders in the long run, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, these big announcements once pumped the whole market, and now they're kind of just falling by the wayside. Like, they're exciting, but they're more exciting for the users, not so much the investors. Like, I don't see Solana tokens getting a huge boost off this news, unfortunately, for the people that are holding a lot of Solana. But I guess that's just a maturation of the markets in crypto.
Absolutely.
And finally, we've been talking an awful lot about prediction markets lately, but apparently Trump has changed his tune once again on prediction markets days after saying he hates them. So this is an ongoing story that's a little bit strange because both of his sons are advisors for both Kalshi and Polymarket, the two biggest prediction markets on the planet right now. And on Thursday, April 24th, Trump told reporters he was never much in favor of prediction markets and that the world has become somewhat of a casino. Ironic for a guy that got rich off of casinos and then ran them into the ground. But by the weekend, he was walking it back. His son, Donald Trump Jr., has an advisory role at Polymarket and has invested in it. Trump Media has explored building its own prediction market integration with crypto.com. So it's hard to regulate something your family profits from. So some people in his family probably lightly tapped him on the shoulder and said, we might lose money, so maybe you can walk this back. And then his exact words on Thursday, April 24th, the whole world, unfortunately, has become somewhat of a casino. I was never much in favor of it. I don't like it conceptually, but it is what it is now. He was responding to a big story last week. They actually arrested somebody that was leaking information and profiting on Polymarket, especially with regards to Venezuelan operations. He was active in that military theater and with the kidnapping of Maduro by the U.S. government. So, this is, we talked about this before. This is treason. Like if you're leaking information and profiting off it, they used to hang people for that or give them the chair during the Cold War. So that the specific trigger for that was the U.S. Special Forces officer. I think he made $400,000 on Polymarket. So they're not happy about that. They're not. It's obviously a black mark for the U.S. government. It makes us look bad. And then he changed his mind again on Polymarket and prediction markets. I think probably had a conversation with his son, who is an advisor, and the rest is history. Now they're probably more than happy to keep them going, maybe explore this relationship with Trump Media or his own prediction market with crypto.com, but who knows what's going to happen next.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, Trump's entire legacy might be blackened by the story of market manipulation after he leaves office, if he does leave office. It feels like there are just too many stories around this. There have been a lot of notable events happening, specifically around prediction markets, but also just like oil futures and everything else that seem to align quite well with the news that the president and his camp are distilling to the public. So at the same time, like I think many people have grown accustomed to the idea that Trump will go back and forth on a single topic multiple times within a week. So it's difficult to put a lot of trust into what he's saying. And, maybe he is just some sort of like social barometer based on how he's perceiving the news and the public's opinion of him. So it's kind of like this vicious cycle of saying something, seeing what happens, get that feedback, going back and forth. I don't know if this means that there's going to be some regulation trickling down to prediction markets. I know Kalshi and Polymarket founders were probably trembling in their boots after Trump made those statements. But again, they are tied in quite deeply into the Trump admin. And I know that there is a lot of discussion and a lot of pushback around, this market manipulation specific to Polymarket and Kalshi. We had that story, I think, last week around California governor imposing some restrictions on politicians and people that serve in public office from betting on prediction markets. And that's kind of been expanding. Now, New York State, I believe, is suing Polymarket because they are unregulated gambling. So we're not really sure how this is going to settle out. But again, some more drama coming out of the Trump camp this week.
Yeah, and just on that note, if you want to learn more about it, our team put out an excellent article on prediction markets, all about the potential good that can be achieved with them, but a lot of the bad as well. So check it out. We'll drop it in the show notes below as well.
Yeah. All right. And then now we are going into our most popular and famous and exciting segment of the weekly recap. We've got our biggest fundraises of the week, and we've got a number of interesting companies on the roll here. Mello, why don't you kick it off?
Yep. Before I do that, though, I'm going to do the boring thing and say like and subscribe. Leave us some comments if you disagree or agree with the stories we've been covering or our takes on them. If we missed any major stories, please help us improve our process. We definitely don't want to miss stories going forward. So let us know in the comment section. We appreciate all the love we've been getting lately. Thank you for watching. And the biggest fundraise of the week, one of them was True Anomaly, a Centennial, Colorado-based developer of space technology, and they raised $650 million in a Series D funding from Eclipse and Riot Ventures.
Very, very exciting. More space tech. Up next, we have Ineffable Intelligence, a London-based AI lab founded by former DeepMind researcher David Silver. They raised $1.1 billion in seed funding, and Sequoia and Lightspeed led the round, later joined by NVIDIA, Google, DST Global, Index Ventures, and a bunch of other ones. The largest seed round in European history. It's wild.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's pretty interesting. Okay, next up we have Seract, a Stuttgart, Germany-based AI robotics software company, which raised $110 million in a Series B funding. Headline led the round, joined by Bullhound Capital, Felix Capital, Daphne, and Creandum.
Up next, Quantum Art, a quantum computing startup, raised $140 million, and the company's developing a multi-core quantum architecture designed to scale beyond existing single-core systems. Admittedly, I don't know a whole lot about quantum, but it sounds important.
Yeah, we tried to do a space on it last week or a few weeks ago, and it didn't work out because of the platform. But yeah, it's an exciting topic that a lot of people probably think is boring, but definitely interesting. So we'll have more news on quantum going forward for sure. And next up, Coltrion Biopharma, a Leuven, Belgium-based developer of therapies and immunology, raised $125 million in Series A funding. That was Forbion and Novo Holdings leading the round, joined by Galapagos and Regeneron Ventures, among others.
Interesting. I used to live in Leuven a long, long time ago. SquareMind, a Paris-based AI and robotics company focused on dermatology, they raised $18 million in funding. Sonder Capital led the round and was later joined by Deep Tech 2030 Fund and a bunch of other venture capital firms. So congratulations to SquareMind.
Yeah, a lot of European funding this week. That's interesting. And
let's kick it out.
Last up, we got more robotics with Reliable Robotics. Not the most creative name, but certainly reliable. Reliable Robotics is a Mountain View-based company, raised $160 million in a round led by Nimble Partners to advance its autonomous technology for commercial and defense aviation.
Ooh. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, commercial aviation, great. Defense aviation, scary.
Oof. Yeah, woohoo.
All right, guys. Well, that's the biggest news headlines within the worlds of finance, hardware, technology, blockchain, AI, and more from your two handsome good friends from Arcanum, Sasha and Carmelo. It's been a pleasure to sit through this with you over the past hour or so and discuss all these headlines. Again, if you're enjoying this content, make sure you tap that like button, show us some love, subscribe, follow, throw some comments down there if you just want to tell us how handsome we are. And make sure you check the links below to join our fun communities and social channels. And then until next week, stay safe, y'all. Take care.
Ciao, everybody.
And have fun.